Welcome to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. I'm Tammi Mack. Hi there, everyone. So tonight we are talking about why the officer who arrested Georgia State Representative Park Cannon claims he feared a repeat of the Capitol riot. Okay. Why President Joe Biden is reviewing his executive authority to wipe out a portion of student loan debt. And also why outrage is brewing over a video of two police officers emotionally tormenting a 5-year-old Black child. This is crazy, y'all, but we about to get into it. It's Friday, and that means it's time for another round of the political and trending highlights of the week with my Friday faves, co-host, the co-founder of the Antiracismky Coalition, Dr. OJ Oleka. Hey, Dr. OJ.
Hey, Tammi Mack.
Comedian and filmmaker Alycia Cooper. Hi, Alycia.
Hey, Tammi.
Activist and radio personality Dominque Diprima, my hero. Hey, Dominque.
Hey, Tammi Mack.
And political analyst Ed Sanders, who is coming high off of a soccer team win. Yay!
Hey, Tammi Mack. Happy Good Friday.
You and your daughter's team feel much better than those South Carolina girls today. That's for sure.
Man, that was a tough loss, wasn't it? But that's what the NCAAs are all about.
Man, that was torture. That was torture. Yeah, that was a rough one. Okay, let's get into some rough stuff here. If y'all don't mind, we can get into some rough stuff. Let's see what we should start with today. Should we hit them on the one, or should we take them real slow? What y'all think tonight?
It's good.
Hit them on the one.
Take it
right
slow.
Wait. Dominique said it's Friday. Take it slow.
No, it's Good Friday.
It's
It's Easter weekend, resurrection,
It's Good
Maybe we should say
Friday.
a prayer, I don't know.
Okay. Well, you probably will have to say a prayer after I hit you with this story. And the next one, Dominique. According to reports, 2 U.S. Capitol Police officers have filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump for his role in the January 6th insurrection that left 5 people dead. The lawsuit claims that Trump's repeated claims of election fraud led to the attack from the mob of his supporters. And the pair also state in their lawsuit that they both suffered physical and emotional injuries because of the riot. Now, they're seeking compensatory damages of a minimum of $75,000 each and punitive damages of an unspecified amount. Should we expect more lawsuits, or is this even, come on, is Donald Trump going to win? Is he going to lose a lawsuit? I think not.
Well, I think you got to go for it, right? I mean, when you see an opportunity in someone with deep pockets like Donald Trump, I think you put something forward. I'm glad they're filing the suits, right? Because I think out of it, you're going to get a lot more discovery. I think we learned a lot about what he said, what he did, a lot of his thinking through some of the congressional hearings. But, there's a different standard of discovery in the courts. And so you'll see subpoenas for documents and emails and stuff. And I hope there's a little more transparency than what we saw in the congressional hearings out of this.
But come on, how many lawsuits are filed against Donald Trump right now and nothing has happened, Dominique?
Yeah, well, okay, there's Donald Trump before the presidency, during and after. I mean, I think during the presidency, he becomes almost Teflon, right? Where you can't do anything to him. Before the presidency, he won everything. But I think after the presidency, it may be different. I mean, maybe the Teflon wears off, and maybe finally one of these hundreds of lawsuits will finally break through. If not the sexual harassment, then hopefully something else.
Dr. Oleka, your mans.
Well, whether or not Donald J. Trump is a man's is probably not something I might say, but
did Dominique just fall out of a chair?
Dominique did a double take. She had to make sure.
Yeah, it's Good Friday. I had to do a little quick prayer.
Oh, okay.
For all of us.
But I think the interesting challenge here.
Land and
Go ahead, Dr.
That's really the thing that's interesting is you have police officers who are heavily protected. You have politicians who are heavily protected in terms of how the law views them. So the fact that you've got the two sides, if you will, going up against one another, in a court case is going to be interesting. But I think Ed makes a pretty good point. We're going to hear a lot more within this type of case. If you see other cases like this, you'll certainly hear more. But looking through the 35-page document as it is now, they've got a lot of tweets. They have some websites out there that aren't necessarily connected to the former president. So it's going to be hard for them to win, but it certainly will raise the conversation about what went on and who said what and who knew what at the time.
Yeah. Alycia.
Yeah, when I heard that officers were suing him, I was hoping that Officer Goodman, the African-American officer who had to become a lion tamer, I was hoping that he was one of the officers, but he wasn't on the list. But yeah, hopefully it'll stick. I mean, I want him to be deposed because that's going to be a nightmare because, deposing somebody like him, that SNL is going to have a month's worth of skits off that. So I just want him to get deposed. And it's time that he's held accountable for something that he's done. And we all know that he incited this. So I'm just glad that a few officers stood up and filed the lawsuit because I didn't even know if it was going to happen, but I'm glad to know that it has happened.
Look, if I see any type of semblance of them possibly winning or going in that direction, I'm filing a lawsuit for emotional stress and damages too, because I am emotionally torn over that administration right now and all that we had to deal with in the last 4 years. So the officer who arrested Georgia State Representative Park Cannon on Thursday said that Cannon's actions reminded him of the January 6th Capitol riot. Now, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the lieutenant governor said in a 13-page incident report that he feared other protesters would be emboldened to follow Cannon's lead after she persistently knocked on Kemp's office door. Tamara Stevens, an activist and protester who filmed Cannon's arrest, said, "Nobody touched that door. We didn't go anywhere near that door. We followed the police officers who were taking Park into the elevator. There was no attempt, flat out, to breach the door," she said. She's the only person that touched the door, period, with a T. No, I added the T, without any hesitation. So how do we feel about this? Was Parks wrong to knock on the door? And are Black people treated differently for peacefully protesting actions that seek to suppress our community? I think we all know the answer to that. We can all agree on that, right?
This is ridiculous. One small, tiny lawmaker knocking on a door is the same as an armed mob breaking the law and erecting a gallows. I mean, I get it if you have post-traumatic stress syndrome, then you should join the long line of people suing Donald J. Trump. You should not be going after a lawmaker who was simply trying to witness, voter suppression so she could be a witness to history. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is quite interesting because I don't think any lawmakers were at the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. So it seemed like there should have been some sort of discernment going on there. Ed, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, you got an officer that is, I think acting out of bounds. But I mean, I want to applaud Representative Cannon for taking the action. I mean, what she's calling to attention is Governor Kemp signing this law behind closed door in a really cowardly act, right? But as much as this is disturbing, I don't want to lose sight of the law itself, right? SB 202 in Atlanta is a despicable law. I want to take a moment, just commend Major League Baseball for moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta behind it. We saw CEOs Ken Frazier and Ken Chenault rally support from Fortune 500 companies for this. What is happening in Georgia is happening in other southern states and in Midwestern states as well. And that's the issue that we should be focusing on. While I hope that Representative Cannon wasn't harmed in any way, the attention that this pulls, I don't want it to distract from, we've got to fight back on these voter suppression laws.
I don't know how I feel about that. You took a strong stand on that, Ed. You like, look, we ain't got time for that. We got to get to this. I don't know how I feel about that, Ed.
Really?
Well, you shouldn't feel good about it.
I feel like we can do it all. Can we do it all? Can we make it all?
We have to pass the For the People Act and we'll be all right, Dr. Oleka?
Well, no, unfortunately, that's wrong. And Tammi Mack, it's interesting, I think, that Ed brings up this law when we're looking at this specific representative. Now, first of all, I support the First Amendment. I'm a big believer in it. I'm a big believer in separation of powers and equal branches. I don't think a lawmaker knocking on a door is tantamount to insurrection. I don't know why the officers thought that. They're not the same. However, this bill is not the way that Ed has described it. It's not the way the media has described it and the professional Democrats have described it. As we've talked about on your show before, this bill, by virtue of the existing law, expands voting opportunities. If the MLB is so upset about Georgia having 17 days of early voting, then they should probably leave New York State, which has less than that. They should probably be out of other states like New Jersey and Delaware that have less than that. So again, this is just Democrats describing this bill in a different way than what it actually is. 2020 was an anomaly year. And so when you have the expansion of voting opportunities like Georgia did, it certainly looks differently than 2018. It's a lot bigger. What they've done is enshrined in law a lot of the things that they did in 2020, but not all of them. So it might seem like it's reducing voting. When you actually look at the existing law, when you read the bill, it is expanding voter opportunity. And the Atlanta Journal-Constitution said as much in a correction in one of their earlier papers this week.
I certainly hope that's true. And I certainly hope that the voters, I certainly hope that the voters will, will take advantage of it. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that every voter in Georgia will take advantage of these new laws. And by every voter, I mean all the Black ones. Alycia?
No, I mean, I agree with what you said, Tammy. We got to take advantage of this stuff because we see what it is. It is true what Dominque and Ed are saying. I understand, Dr. Oleka, that you feel the way that you do, but we see what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's clear cut. We see what it is. It's voter suppression, and Stacey Abrams is going to handle it at the end of the day because we know she's at the helm, and I sleep easily knowing that.
Oh, okay. We sleeping easy. Okay, I like that. But Dr. Oleka, you have said that a couple of things in that bill or in that law are a little off-putting because it distracts from some of the portions of the bill that make total sense, right? Like the handing out of water, it distracts from the goodness of that law.
Yes, and I think that is important to point out because there is a clause within the new law that explicitly says that third-party groups cannot offer food and water anymore to voters like they previously could. So the two arguments, to be objective about this, is that the Secretary of State's office still offers water, so you still can get it. But the counter response is it really necessary to allow third-party groups to no longer do that? Sure, it's considered electioneering, so you have an advocacy group that will go up to voters and give them food or drink. My thought is if you're already voting, you're probably not going to be swayed one way or another on big races where there are actually partisan issues. So I might have elected to leave this out. But again, when you try and focus on a specific measure, and again, use phrases like Jim Crow 2.0, again, we all know what Jim Crow was, what it is, the negative impact and the legacy of it. To say that there is a bill that has become a law that is now Jim Crow 2.0 because it changes the election proceedings, I think is quite frankly dangerous. And
it's amazing how every single person who reads this bill, except for you, thinks it restricts voting. And I have a bone to pick with you, Dr. O.J. Oleka, because last week I didn't have time to respond. You were talking about H.R. 1 saying, now you're going to have to pay for elections. So basically, your talking points, which you're so good at. I mean, you have the Republican right-wing talking points down. You're like the most faithful talking point reciter I've ever seen. But that's not the truth. The fact is it's getting dark money out of elections. It's making our elections more clean and fair by making it more transparent as to who's giving money to whom. And so for you to spin it as, oh, they're going to make you pay for elections is just silly. You're talking about taxpayer money being used to make elections more transparent. Well, taxpayer money pays for everything from roads to ballots. So that's a really cheesy argument.
Well, I mean, I don't know that it's cheesy. I would just ask the viewers of the Tammi Mac Late Show, do you want your taxpayer dollars to fund the speech of a political opponent that you disagree with? It's a simple question.
But that's a misleading way of putting it. What we're talking about is getting dark money out of elections. And if that means taxpayers subsidizing some of the election process, so be it. We already pay for the ballots. We already pay for the roads. We pay for the elections. I mean, that's what the commons is. That's what our taxpayer dollars do. So you're just trying to spin it and make it sound like it's some new fee. And that's just not the truth.
Well, we're going to continue to find out what the truth is right here on the Tammi Mac Late Show when we return on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi McLeod Show on Fox Soul, where tonight I have my Friday faves on because we are reviewing the entire week. How about that? Dr. Oleka is here with us. Dominque Diprima is here. Ed Sanders and Alycia Cooper, all here with me and for the people. Power to the people. Let's go. So Ed, you brought this up. You brought it up. So let's get into it. The MLB says, nah, we ain't going to Atlanta. Voter suppression laws, we ain't down with it. So go ahead, talk about that thing.
Yeah, I mean, in the last segment, OJ was trying to convey to people that this wasn't a voter suppression law. Very clearly, everyone that outside of the Republican legislature in Georgia is looking at this and seeing it as voter suppression. This is Jim Crow 2.0. Everything in that bill is designed to restrict voting. And so, you're starting to see it again. I referenced Ken Chenault, Ken Frazier, African-American corporate leaders galvanizing support out of the rest of corporate America. You saw Delta CEO make comments. And then today you see Major League Baseball deciding that, you know what, we're going to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. They'll find a new city where to host it. I understand that it's something like 40 billion. I may be wrong. One of the two of those is the economic impact to the state of Georgia. And it's an important statement by a high profile athletic league in this country.
So let's just go ahead and get this statement from the commissioner, the baseball commissioner. He says, over the last week, we have engaged in thoughtful conversations with clubs, former and current players, the Players Association, the Players Alliance, among others, to listen to their views. I have decided that the best way to demonstrate our values as a sports is to relocate this year's All-Star game and MLB draft. Major League Baseball fundamentally supports voting rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions to the ballot box. Fair access to voting continues to have our unwavering support. Alycia, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I just feel badly for all the businesses that are going to be hit because they're going to make good money for that. But, you got to take a stand. Wasn't it Stevie Wonder who said he wasn't going to sing in Georgia a couple years ago? Because of the laws that they had.
I think that was Ray Charles.
You think it was Ray Charles? I think it was Stevie. And I mean,
I think they actually stopped Ray Charles from singing in Georgia.
Oh man, that good song, Georgia. But yeah, it was Stevie. And the thing is that you have to take a stand. I'm just really proud of MLB that they took this major of a stand, and I think it's going to make a difference.
You think it's going to make a difference, Dominque?
I think it makes a difference. I think it's important that we are clear with some of these companies like Delta that they're responding to pressure. Initially, they wanted to ignore this or recite talking points. But when the people start putting pressure on and boycotting, this is where you vote with your dollars. And it is very effective in changing the minds of certain corporate leaders, and big ups to those who take a more proactive stance.
So what did Delta do? Nothing?
Well, they got criticized for saying.
Well, I know they got criticized, but did they make any adjustments?
Well, they're backing off. I mean, they haven't made any grand statement, but clearly they're edging away from their initial stance. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them, taking a stronger position. I expect more and more corporations will in the days ahead as this picks up momentum.
Yeah, and I think that if nothing else, the MLB doing this definitely persuades other corporations to do it, because Coca-Cola is huge in Atlanta. And, Coca-Cola initially stood by these voter laws as well. And now we kind of see them taking a little turn too. Dr. Oleka, you like the laws. So how do you feel about this?
Well, again, this is the problem that I've got with this entire narrative. If you look at the election in 2018 and the laws associated with the election in 2018, meaning the last normal election prior to COVID, this new law in Georgia expands voting. So when you're looking at it objectively and not looking at an anomaly year where every single state made voting different based on pandemic rules, this bill in Georgia expands voting. Was the MLB leaving Georgia in 2018 because of their voting laws? The thing that bothers me about this so much is that it is clearly pressure. It's clearly Democrat and media talking points designed to make the Republican Party in Georgia look like it's rolling back voting opportunities because they lost in 2020. That's just not what's happening. So if businesses want to leave the state, they certainly can. But I think this is a very bad decision, and I think they're going to regret it in the future. The Atlanta Braves have said that they're not for it. They said that this isn't something that they enjoy. If you look at Major League Baseball and who their supporters are, they're typically conservative by nature, especially in Atlanta and Georgia. I just don't think people are going to think this is a very good decision.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Oleka. Do you believe if Georgia did not turn blue, that any of these laws would have even been addressed?
Absolutely, they would have been addressed. And here's the reason why I say that. Is because you have people all across the country talking about the importance of changing election laws. In Kentucky, the state where I'm from, the state where I live, that went red 100%, went for Trump, went for McConnell. We changed our election laws as well to be more expansive. Because the point is, when people saw that you had more people participating in the process based on a change in election, particularly with absentee and mail-in and early voting, it was good for the country. Georgia's law, and again, I realize I'm repeating myself here, but it bears repeating. Georgia law expands voting in terms of regular opportunities from 2018 before the COVID pandemic. To say otherwise is a blatant falsehood.
To say what you're saying is a blatant falsehood, Dr. Oleka.
And let me, Dominic, let me tell you, in 2018, this was the gubernatorial election with Stacey Abrams and Kemp. Kemp was the Secretary of State in the state of Georgia. And so his office really set the election rules. Now, you want to say that the 2020 election, or even just the most recent election, there was an expansion of voting. And the reason why that's not true is that Kemp, as Secretary of State, did everything he could to reduce and suppress the African-American vote in his race against Stacey Abrams. If you'll recall, in Georgia, you'll see these long lines of voting polling boxes where there's like 2,000 people in line. That is ridiculous. You know why that is? It's because he spaced out the polling offices for miles. I mean, 45, 50 miles at a distance, so that people had to drive that far in order to vote. Now that is Jim Crow at its finest. That is making it so difficult to vote that people have to stand in line for an hour to 8 hours at a time. And that was caused by Kemp. And that's what the Republican legislature is codifying. So if you say that there's a slight increase in voting compared to that you're being misleading in that.
No,
now, in this law, what we're talking about is even just the ability to apply for an absentee voter application. Yeah, they've reduced it from 180 days down to 190 days. You've got to do it in a shorter window, and you can't do it close to the election period. And what that's designed to do is to stop groups from educating voters, helping people register, send in their absentee ballot applications, get it back in time so that they can vote. You know that the Democratic side of the equation does a better job of educating voters. They see voter registration drives working. They work. And they get people engaged in the process. And for some reason, getting people engaged in the process doesn't work for Republicans.
Dr. Oleka is laughing at you.
Well, because I think what Ed's saying is funny. Because, and let me just pose this question again to the soulmates. You have 90 days to register and get your ballot in early. If 90 days is not long enough for you to be educated and make a decision on voting, 180 days doesn't make that much of a difference. That's number one. Number two, if you're talking about what Kemp did when he was Secretary of State and then became governor, if this was such a desire to grab power and codify it and solidify it, why not do this in 2019? Why not make sure that the dastardly Democrats can't win in 2020? Because that wasn't its purpose.
That's why he's doing it.
That wasn't his purpose. If he was doing it that way, then you do it in 2019 or you do it early in 2020 when you have 2 Senate seats on the ballot and the presidency on the line. If the fact of the matter is, these changes were made explicitly because of what people saw all across the country in 2020 with voter participation.
Okay, you know what's really amazingly disingenuous about what you're saying? You're making it sound like the only reason we saw an expansion of voting in Georgia in 2020 was because of COVID-19. Not because of Black Voters Matter, not because of Stacey Abrams, not because of LaTosha Brown. And that's bull. I mean, what the Republicans are trying to do now is make sure that Black voters do not remain mobilized, do not remain within access. Who are you to say whether someone needs 90 days or 180 days? You don't know what they have to do with their kids. You don't know how many jobs they have to work to pay their rent. You don't know what their scenario is. Why do Republicans hate it when Black people vote? The Republican Party is the party that does not want Black people to vote.
That's absolutely not true. That's simply not accurate.
Clearly.
To say the Republicans don't want Black people to vote is not true. The Republican Party had a concerted effort in 2020 to win more Black voters, and it did. In fact, we had more Black elected officials in Congress. We had more Black voters vote for President Trump in 2020. There was a concerted effort. It's just simply not true.
So let's go to our soulmates here. I think you've both made your points. You disagree. So you know what? Let's lighten it up a little bit. Who made this comment? Ed has sexy eyes. We trying to educate the people and be righteous here and woke and conscious on the Tammi Mac Lake Show, and this is what you give us, soulmates? Ed has sexy eyes.
They missed you last week, Ed. That's what it is.
Ed, you come back with soccer medals and now your eyes all sexy.
And I did get a cool. Ed is back. Ed is back. Cool. That is cool. Okay. Let's see. And then we have a new soulmate on board. I think this says Black. I want to get your name right. Blacray. I'm gonna say Blacray. Question to Ed: why is no one Black talking about the 58 votes the Black Congressional Caucus has to push a Black agenda? You familiar with that, Ed?
Well, it's the strength of the caucus in relation to, one, the Democratic caucus in the House, but then two, sort of the overall vote. I would actually disagree. I think the Black Caucus wields its power, is in a very thoughtful manner. Those votes aren't enough to get anything passed, and everything in Congress is about building coalitions. But where you see some of these deals that are legislation that is getting cut forward, where you can get the African American caucus or Black caucus to vote as a block, we see some benefits coming down. I think we saw that in the COVID relief bill that was passed as well.
So on to my favorite subject, student debt.
Here we go.
Yes.
Speak on it.
I have now lowered my student debt from $28,956 to $27,126.
Well done, Tammi.
Oh.
Well done.
Getting it on down. I'm getting it on down, y'all.
Don't make no more payments because Biden got you.
I'm trying my best. Look, Alycia, I am counting on him. If he does not get rid of my student debt or at least half of it, I'm not voting for him.
That's real talk, though.
I gave him his chance. Oleka, you'll have a
specific reason.
Oleka, you'll have me back. You will have me back, Oleka. You will have me back if this man does not get rid of my student debt. So according to NBC News, President Joe Biden asked his education secretary to prepare a formal memo on his legal authority to cancel student loan debt up to $50,000. Back in February, Biden spoke about student loan debt cancellation, saying, "I understand the impact of debt and it can be debilitating. I'm prepared to write off the $10,000 debt, but not $50,000 because I don't think I have the authority to do it." Well, in a recent interview about the memo, White House Chief of Staff said that after President Biden reviews the memo, he will move forward with how to proceed as early as within the next few weeks. This is better than a stimulus check to me, people. I'm sorry. Will this move help close the racial wealth gap at all, Dominque?
It's not going to close my racial wealth gap because I already paid mine off.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Well, I don't know. It's just, credit, force of habit. But I think it's a great idea. I do think that I know that African-American students tend to take out more loans as opposed to grants because we tend to have less to rely on in terms of family wealth. And so, closing that gap in terms of getting our debt down, I'm all for it, even though it's too late for me.
I'm sorry about that. I'm going to hold on. I'm going to stay strong and keep my student debt. Go ahead, Ed.
In the end game, I think it's a good move for the country. I think to the soulmates question about how does it benefit the African American community a little more, I'd like to see a little more in the conversation. Specifically around HBCUs, right? I think most know I'm a Howard grad, and so I think
so
Howard.
What, Ed? I'm a Bennett grad.
It's important. You know that you need to know that. But
you know what? But it's ironic. This is ironic. I owe no money for Bennett College because I went to school for free, undergrad. But it was the grad school that got me. It was the PWI that got me in all of this debt.
but when to Dominique's point about African Americans and carrying debt, more African Americans are carrying as a percentage college debt, and to the graphic that's out there, that debt is holding back large numbers of African Americans who have attained a graduate degree.
So what would I'm curious to know
that there's fewer African Americans than say whites or Asians that have graduated, and so the benefit doesn't fully extend to us. I think we've got to find more ways to create more access for African Americans to get to college.
So I'm curious to know, though, when you talk about he hasn't really implemented how this will affect the Black community and HBCUs. Look, if you have student debt, you have student debt. So why does this have to be divided?
Well, I think it's a recognition that in this country, one, either you're going to a private school, you're going to a state school, and then for African Americans, there are the HBCUs. While not exclusive to African Americans, it tends that's where we apply. And a lot of those universities and colleges are struggling financially. And I would love to see the federal government take that issue by the reins and bring some financial stability to what is an incredible avenue for African American students.
That's a great point. A lot of the HBCUs are suffering financially, and Bennett College being one, my alma mater. So I get what you mean now. How do they incorporate that into this? And
there, from a percentage of African American students, that's a significant portion. And so, I think you've got to find a way to solidify that, open more access for more African American students to get in. But then in the long run, as a country, we really have to decide, do we want to have this sort of meat market where high school students take out, $100,000 in loans just so that they can go to college, and you're starting life off with that big ball and chain around your ankle. I think we can do better. We've talked about healthcare for all. I think we can talk about higher education for all as well.
Well,
Dr. Oleka, where do you stand?
Well, there's some challenges here. And again, this is my area of research. So I certainly understand what the president is trying to do. I think his heart is in the right place. I don't think this is good policy, though, because, again, it only responds to specific people right now who have debt. And Tammi Mack, as you mentioned, your debt isn't with undergrad. For most people, the big numbers, the big figures of debt is with their graduate programs, it's with master's degrees. And so you have a few things that go on. There's a common misconception that if you go to a private school, in particular, a private college, that you won't get financial resources, that they are more expensive. That actually isn't true typically. They provide more opportunities for students to go, especially low-income students. They typically graduate them with less debt and they make more money coming out. These are the private liberal arts colleges. So there's an opportunity there. So if you're looking at better policy that could help everybody afford a college opportunity, it would be doubling the Pell Grant. That's a scholarship, grant opportunity for students who come from low-income backgrounds. Doubling it would be able to equal some of the higher costs of college now, but also expanding Section 127 of the tax code, which allows employers to offer up to $5,250 of student debt relief tax-free. So if I come out of college and I have student loan debt, an employer can say, well, we'll pay a little over $5,000 to reduce that debt for you at no tax cost to you or to the company at all. So if you expand those two things, then you're really sandwiching the cost. You're reducing it on the front end for low-income students, but you're also making sure that on the back end, debt is lower for people who are working.
Well, that's an intriguing idea, but it raises one of the other points about all of this is that as African American students graduate, they tend to have harder time finding jobs, and even once they find the jobs, they're not brought in at the same pay scale as either whites, Asians, and so with those disparities, the policy that he suggests actually doesn't benefit us as it does other ethnic groups.
Interesting. Alycia, we got to get you in here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight, but I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all for eliminating debt and letting people start out with less hassle and headache and the ball and chains around them. And, you know, like you guys said, it's mainly graduate school, but, you know, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. That's why I voted for Joe Biden, for policies like this that don't help big corporations and the rich people, but to help the little people. And I'm glad that he's doing this.
And I'm glad it's time to go to commercial break because y'all's getting too heated tonight. We'll be right back on the Tammi McLeod Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi McLeod Show on Fox Soul, where we are rewinding the entire week. Yes, with my guest, Dr. O.J. Oleka is here. Alycia Cooper is here. Ed Sanders on board. And Dominque Diprima is not to be outdone by Ed's eyes tonight. Our soulmate, Nari, says, I'm loving me some Dominque tonight. So there you have it.
Thank you.
While we were on the topic of student loan, according to Insider, the typical Black millennial has 17 times less wealth than their white peers. That's $5,000 compared to $88,000 for their white peers. And student loan debt is one of the biggest reasons why. According to Brookings Institution, Black students should shoulder a heavier debt burden than their white peers, with about 87% of Black students attending four-year colleges taking out student loans compared to about 60% of white students. So on average, they also owe $74,000 more than their white peers after graduating and are nearly 5 times as likely to default on their loans than their white peers. Is education really the antidote to poverty? And let me say this because real quick, Dominque, you were saying you paid off your loans. You have no student loans, you know, because of your credit situation. Listen, I have not defaulted on my student loan. I keep my little $50 payment going strong, y'all. So my credit is fine. Now, the question is, how long will that $50 payment be going on? I'm looking for Joe to clear this thing up. Is education really the antidote to poverty? Because I was also reading an article that suggests that millennials are making a lot more money than the generations before because of social media and the gigs that they're getting on social media, which require no education, I might add.
Well, it is certainly the antidote for poverty structurally, but you actually have to get it. And what I mean by that is a lot of students are graduating high school when they're not actually college or career ready, as the research language might say. Unfortunately, this is largely in high minority or in high poverty schools, meaning that if you are a Black student and you're low income and the majority of your peers are the same way or situated similarly, the classes that you get aren't likely to be taught by educators who are as strong, because the research says that newer teachers are in those types of schools and they don't have the command of the content. They don't have the behavior management to do as well. So basically, you're in a position where you are structurally designed to fail. So you could potentially be an influencer. But again, the percentages of people who would actually do well just based on social media aren't as high as the folks who are going to need a 9-to-5 job, who are going to need some type of skill for some employer. So education works, but you actually have to get it. And unfortunately, too many of our kids aren't getting it.
Let's go to the soulmates real quick. Let's see here. Incog says this move won't close the racial wealth gap, but it will be one less burden. The reason is Black people as a collective are still underpaid, rent is high, and are carrying on family burdens. Johnny Maxwell, welcome to the Tammi McLeod Show. Joe Biden needs to pass a bill raising minimum wage statewide and create more government financial aid for people in poverty-stricken neighborhoods. That's his answer. And then Ursula O, our faithful soulmate, says student loan is set. I don't even know what that says. It looks like Ursula was writing too fast. Anyway, she says student loans multiply like roaches. They pull folks out of caskets looking for those payments. So she's not very happy about the student loan process, I see. So Ed, how do you feel about poverty and versus education, or education versus poverty? Do you believe that education is the key to getting out of poverty these days?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the path forward has always been, I think it's always been, developing the next generation to succeed. And, to Dr. O.J. Oleka's point, we certainly have to spend some focus on our elementary schools, our secondary schools, getting our kids ready. It is true that not everyone needs to have, the astrophysics degree, but we do need to see that our community is represented across all sectors, right? And so where you've got folks that are good in math and science, they need to go on to engineering class. We need more attorneys. We need, we definitely need more skilled people. And in that regard, education is upward mobility in this country. I think what we've been talking about with loan debt is that the way the financing of that education works, it handcuffs that upward mobility. And that's what we need to take a look at how to reform that. For example, if you served in the military under the GI Bill, a lot of your undergrad is paid for by that. So there's maybe some other models you could look at. But as a country, we have to figure out a way that people can get educated in quality institutions, but aren't handcuffed financially for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
You just gave me an epiphany when you started saying we need to get more Black children involved in different aspects, career aspects. And I've always wondered why Black people go into the entertainment business or the sports business. And I think you just helped me figure it out, because when you said we need to get more of them in engineering and more of them, which a lot of Black people are in engineering, North Carolina A&T is one of the best engineering schools that are out there right now, which is an HBCU. However, I think it is the lack of opportunity and resources that prevent us from I think it was Dominque earlier that said, we can't get these jobs in these places. We can't get the positions. We don't have the resources to get in. And so it kind of prevents us from going there. Whereas when you're in entertainment and sports, it's your talent that speaks for yourself, not necessarily how you get in. It's more of a talent-based kind of situation that's pretty factual from a standpoint of how great you are, how fantastic you are, i.e. the Oprahs and LeBrons of the world. Am I making any sense at all?
Yeah, but it's also exposure. I think those are the more visible, tangible examples of success. We see the LeBrons, we see the Oprahs. I think we have to see more of the physicists and scientists working at JPL that are making, a good sum of money.
But if JPL aren't letting our Black students in, we've got a problem.
Well, and to really take on poverty and opportunity, it's got to be a multi-pronged approach, right? Forgiving student loans is a good part. Increasing opportunities is a good part. Some expansion of trade schools for those that aren't going to get, aren't going to be engineers, but want other opportunities. And look, reparations has to be part of this, because we're talking about the legacy of 12 generations of Black people working for no pay. That's why we don't have the money. That's why we end up with this student loan debt. And that has to be addressed. And education is one place where reparations could really make a difference. And I'm not just talking about free tuition. We need books. We need housing. We need all the things that other students get that help them to succeed, not just more opportunities to struggle by having more and more jobs when we should be doing our homework.
Thank you for bringing it all home then, Dominque. We're going to take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show. Back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. So the child, hold on, everybody. Outrage is brewing in Maryland after the Montgomery County Police Department released an alarming video showing two officers screaming and insulting a 5-year-old Black boy before handcuffing the child and repeatedly threatening him. The child allegedly hit a school teacher and ran away from the East Silver Spring Elementary School in January. Watch this clip.
Know what? Sit down.
2008 Cadillac.
Sit down. Shut that noise up. Shut that noise up now. Boy, I'm tired. I hope your mama let me beat you. I swear to you. Ain't nobody listening.
Oh my.
I thought I was watching Sam Kinison. Who sits up there and jumps in a kid's face screaming like that? That lady should be arrested and fired. That is not how you handle a screaming child. That's what kids do. They scream. Why did she hug him? Show him some love, get down on his level and speak to him and try to find out what exactly is going on. That's not how you get results. I hope your mama lets me beat you. This sounds like some old color purple slave shit. And I hope somebody's mama beats her. That is absolutely ridiculous. Then the mother showed up and they talked to the mother crazy. I'm like, the lady looked overwhelmed. She said that she works an hourly wage, and when she's not at work, she's losing money. And, I think the mother is doing the best she can, but it's not easy under any circumstance. Then they attack the mother saying she's not beating him enough. And I was like, when has this been the answer to a child being a little unruly? That's what some kids do. He hit a teacher. He wasn't going to kill this teacher. Like a 5-year-old.
We've got a second part to that clip. Let's see that real quick.
Okay.
Oh, okay, maybe not. My bad. My bad. So part of the video taken from a body camera includes the child's mother, Shantae Grant, who complains that she is not legally allowed to beat her child. The officers then handcuff the 5-year-old in front of his mother before Grant agrees to beat the child when they get home. According to CNN, the child's family is now suing the Montgomery County Police Department over the incident, despite Grant's comments in that video. She said she did not realize what the officers had done before she arrived. The officers have not been fired for their conduct, and a union official told CNN that the two are facing corrective action and nothing else. Dominique, you have a child.
Yeah, these are the things that make me say we should never have police officers on campuses, that Black children are criminalized, we're disproportionately expelled and suspended. You know that if that child was not Black, the way that scenario unfolded would be entirely different. It's just infuriating as a mother. And it's more than firing people. We have to have a total change in approach, a total change in training for these educators and people that think that this is the way to discipline a child.
Dr. Oleka, you can't think this is right?
No, I can't, you can't. I don't think anybody could, just by looking at this or even hearing about it. My first thought was, I wonder if any of these people themselves have children. Because how would they feel looking at their 5-year-old being treated this way, screamed at, yelled at, handcuffed? Would they say, this is the way that my beautiful, adorable 5-year-old should be treated? Again, regardless of the skin. But I think Dominique has a very good point. If this child was white and looked differently, I think this situation would have been handled differently. She already pointed out some of the research. We know more research says that Black children are aged in the minds of people by about 4 or 5 years. So there's the whole idea that this young boy shouldn't have been treated like a boy is not new, but unfortunately it is just as disgusting this time as it was any other time before and will be any other time after it. This is not how you handle kids. All you're doing is creating trauma in the mind of this young man, and now he's going to fear and hate police officers as opposed to believing that they should protect him. And why would he feel any differently based on what he's experienced?
Excellent point. We're going to take a quick break and come right back and see if we can talk about our feelings with the George Floyd trial that started this week in less than 2 minutes. We'll be right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. So let's end tonight's show with your thoughts on how this Derek Chauvin trial is going right now. So Dr. Oleka, let's start with you.
Well, Tammi Mac, I'll be honest with you and the Soulmates. I try very hard not to watch these things for my own mental health. I know where I stand on George Floyd. I know where I stand on what happened to him last summer. But I will say this in terms of what we've discussed with regard to the case and the things this week. To me, I think it's pretty clear that when an individual is handcuffed and they're on the ground and they're clearly no longer a threat, you don't have to put your knee on the back of their neck to the point where they die.
All right. Ed, what do you got?
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with OJ. I think, but what I think we're starting to see is the criminal justice system unfolding as we know it starts to. Hopefully this verdict comes out with justice in mind, but you can see the questions being raised.
Dominique.
I think the prosecutors are doing an excellent job. I too mitigate how much of this I watch because I don't think it's good for me. But I think the witnesses have been incredible, particularly the children, the MMA fighter. I mean, what are the odds that these people would be on the ground? And I am given some hope by the fact that Merrick Garland and the Justice Department have already indicated that if this trial does not resolve in a favorable manner, they're ready to move forward with civil rights charges.
Oh, wow. Yeah. What are the odds that an EMT and an MMA fighter would be on hand to bear professional witness to this? That was just mind blowing to me. Alycia, you going to take us out today?
Yeah, the coroner's report said homicide. I'm going with homicide. At the end of the day, that was asphyxiation. If you remove the knee and make it 2 hands over the throat, it's the same difference. His airwaves was cut off. I don't want to hear that he had used drugs prior. His girlfriend testified they did drugs together. She's still walking up and down the street every day. That was not the reason this man is dead. He's dead because somebody asphyxiated him. And I hope that the jury sees this, because if not, it's not going to be good. It's just not going to be good.
There will be hell to pay.
There'll be hell up in Harlem.
And every other United States.
Or just federal civil rights charges again. The Rodney King story, part 2.
Again.
Yeah, let's hope that they get this one right so that we can have some sense of relief that the justice system is now moving in a direction that is for the people. Dr. Oleka, thank you so much. Alycia, Ed, and Dominique, I appreciate you all for being on the Tammi Mac Late Show each and every Friday. Happy Good Friday and happy Easter over the weekend. That is it. Until Monday, it's a blessing to be in your box. Bye, y'all.